Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
Hi, I'm Jessica Faust. I just have to show the thumb because you love it so much.
You've got to just get it out there in the open. We are literary agents who have taken our popular blog to YouTube to discuss all things publishing. Today we are discussing revisions.
Revisions, yes, revisions with your agent specifically, not just a broad revision chat.
Yeah, so there's the idea that, you sign an agent and it's all merry, right? Like, oh, they love my book. This is great. We're going to send it out on submission. Yeah. But most agents, like us, consider themselves editorial. And what that means is that we are rolling up our sleeves and getting in there. I don't think I have ever sent a book out on submission that didn't even have like a couple of changes.
No, maybe only my tried and true authors who have been working together with their editor for years. Right. But yeah, no, nothing fresh and new ever goes out without good revisions.
Right. So it can feel like, oh man, I thought they loved this book. How come they want all of these changes to it?
Yes.
So we wanted to discuss revisions, how an agent approaches it, and what kind of revisions you may expect from your agent once you officially sign.
Well, I think the first thing is, what do agents look for in revisions? And I think every agent is going to approach this differently, depending on their style, their background, all of those things. Yes. So let's talk about, I guess the first thing we all look at is developmental, right?
Doing great. Yeah. So the way we've broken it down.
So much shade right there. So much shade.
This one is not going great. But the way we break it down is we figured out 4 types of revisions that we might do. So the biggest one that you might get from an agent is a set of developmental revisions. And what we mean by that is bigger picture, puzzle pieces of the book, the pacing, the plot, character arcs, things of that nature, the bigger revisions you might have to complete.
Yeah, this for me as an agent is my primary focus.
Right.
So it's, and the way I personally look at it is, what is in this book that's going to trigger a rejection from an editor? And let's fix it. So it could be a plot inconsistency, it could be a twist that's not a twist, or a twist that's not working, or something that was too easy to see. Or for me, it could also be a character issue where the character wasn't coming across in a realistic enough way.
Yep, and usually for Jessica, endings.
Yes, I have a habit of picking up books that need a complete ending rewrite. It's
always fun.
Always. Oh, because I read the whole book and it's fantastic, and then I get to the ending and I think, oh, we can fix this.
Yeah. Well, and those could be extensive, or they could be like minor fixes that really do change the whole book for us, right? Like it could be the last 20 pages, or it could be the last 20 pages plus a section in the middle, a section in the beginning to set that up. So yeah. I think when we say developmental, we really do mean it's like the bird's eye view of your book, right? Like if you zoom out and you're looking and you can see, well, this part of the plot's not working and it gets slower here. That's what we consider developmental changes.
Yeah, so for me, when I'm giving the revisions to the author, a developmental change is something that I can tell them in one paragraph, this is what needs to happen. And it's usually a massive change. Yeah. So it's like,
or a change of massive effect.
Right. So it could be something like, it was all great up until the last 50 pages. The ending really fell apart. I think you need to completely revamp the whole ending. One paragraph, a lot of work for the author, because we all know that revamping the ending doesn't just mean the last 50 pages of the book. You've got to start at the beginning to get the ending, right? So that for me is what a developmental revision is. I relay it in a short amount of information, but it's a giant change.
Right. Yeah, it's going to change the overall plot of the book is what really.
Yeah.
The second type of revisions, and maybe this is more common in picture books, though I also feel like in novels it can be done as well, like thematic revisions. And I think you kind of touched on it with like with character too, like why would this character do that? Is that who she is? That's kind of what I consider thematic. Like, okay, well, this character decided to kill her brother at the end, but would she have really killed her brother, or something along those lines?
Right.
That really could change the messaging of the character arc, or the book's message, you know? And in picture books, it's really common because almost every picture book has some sort of message.
Right.
So is this the right message for the book, right? Like, are we applying a message subtly to a book that really the concept or the characters are not really jiving with? So that's why I wanted to bring those up, because I think that they can be done throughout, but there are things where this character's decisions don't make sense of who she is and what she, you know, sort of signals to the reader.
Well, and I think you're right. I think this is probably most common in a picture book where you might say, you know, the message is about kindness, but can we switch it to peace or something like that without changing the story in a big way? I have done this a fair number of times with cozy mysteries, where I'll get a really great cozy, everything about it is great, but the hook is either something that's been done before a million times or something that I already know I can't sell because maybe we've tried it before.
Yeah.
So I might say to the author, everything about this is fantastic, but can we change your hook? Currently, you know, you have it set in a real estate office. What if we made your main character a baker? Could they be a wedding cake baker instead? And it doesn't change the story necessarily. Right. It just changes the hook and that kind of thing. So I think that would be an adult comparison to the picture books.
And I had the pleasure of working on a horror novel that really dealt with a lot of themes of justice, but the beginning of the book, we didn't get like as much injustice as we needed to really set that character up. So really like weaving that through. And I think it might also be common in like upmarkety literary kind of books that deal with a lot of that. But to make sure that it's even and it's balancing throughout the book and that you're giving the right message and it's justified for the characters as well.
Yeah.
Another type of change might be a narrative change. I've done this before. I've done it for my own books. I've done it with the client book. Changing some way that the narrative is told, whether it's changing the tense, changing the point of view, adding a point of view, eliminating a point of view. It's common and it happens. And sometimes it doesn't change the full story, but it does change the narrative of the story, like how it's told to the reader.
I just went out on submission with 2 different books that we did this to in dramatic ways. And one of the books had multiple POVs. And we completely eliminated one. Simply because it didn't add to the book. It was the other 2 were so strong, and the third one took away from everything.
Yeah, and I think this is the biggest type of, like, I think this is bigger than a developmental edit, like, because you are every fabric of the book, like word by word, you're redoing things. So that's why I think this is actually the biggest type of revision.
Yeah, because if you remove a point of view, you've removed an entire storyline, but you can't just take it out, right? There's still elements of that has to be in there for the story.
Right. Unless you can just take it out, then even better, right?
Like, yeah, but if you can just take it out, you should never have submitted it with that in their first place.
Say it again.
But the second one I did, which had a massive narrative change, was a timeline. So it had a dual timeline, and we removed one entire timeline because ultimately in both of these situations, the POV and the timeline were not actually adding to the story. Most importantly, they weren't, what's the word I'm looking for? They weren't forwarding the story. They weren't moving things forward in the story. They were almost stopping the reader in our tracks. They were deadening it for us. And by taking them out, the story became more active and alive.
Yeah, which affects the pacing. Like all of these are intertwined too.
Yeah, but again, in both these instances, the author still had to find a way to take the information that was important in those 2 things and weave it through in a different way. So it was a massive global change.
Yeah. Okay, the last level of revisions, and probably I would say some of the easiest types of revisions, are the line level stuff. You know, I had a client where we were missing, and I know that this is so minor, but we were missing commas after a sentence and then somebody's name, like in speech. Like we need that comma before the name because it signals to your brain something, and the way the book flows is different. Like those kinds of things. Or, you know, this paragraph, could you scale back on the overwriting? Or maybe this you can expand on and just give some more of that writing, you know, flow to the book.
I'm going to be honest, I'm doing less and less of this. This is very tedious. I can do line level. I'm great at things like, you know, inconsistencies and, you know, flow and things like that, but I am not great at grammar and punctuation. But I really feel that the line level should be there from the author. You know, there's always going to be stuff, but a line level typically, if it shouldn't be so extensive that it's going to trigger a rejection in my world. Right. So if you're coming to me with a book that needs that much work, you know, you don't know how, you don't understand the basics of grammar, punctuation, and you haven't had somebody help you do it, then I'm going to probably pass, because that gets to be a lot of work for an agent. When even in a publishing house, they have somebody completely separate who handles that usually. Yeah. So if I find things while I'm doing the developmental edit and things, I will make those marks, but I don't do, for me, another round of line level.
I do a metric ton of these.
Yeah, no, and everybody's different. I think you'll find agents who are on both sides of that, and that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, and I think I probably do more of them because in picture books, it really does come down to word choice a lot. Like, why are we using this word? Is this word necessary?
Well, it's a lot easier on 4 pages than it is on 400.
Yeah. So that's probably why I do the most of these. And like, okay, but we can add a comma, we can make this flow a little bit, we can break the line here. So I do a ton of that. But I also, I mean, still for picture books too, I think that is probably the easiest thing that we can do in a picture book revision.
But I also think it's much more important in picture books. Yeah, because a comma, and like you said, dropping a line down changes the way a picture book reads. It doesn't necessarily have the same impact on a 400-page book.
Agreed.
But I do think it's important to note how the differences, and I do think I used to do more line level, and I have set a boundary and I don't do as many as I used to.
Good for you. Okay, so I think all of this really does reinforce that this does not mean an agent hates a book. In fact, I would say it means an agent loves a book even more. I think for us to take something on that we know needs that work, we really love something about it, or a lot of some things about it. And to have that vision, that editorial vision and feedback, I think really lends itself to, you know, an excitement or a love of a book. Like, we can't just come up with that sometimes, you know?
And I think that really goes to show why an agent, you know, when authors say, well, if you liked it that much, why didn't you offer? Because I need to like it enough to want to spend this much time with the book and do this much work on it. And I could really enjoy the read, but I don't necessarily always want to read it again.
And sometimes it's multiple rounds of any one of these revisions, or a combination of all these types of revisions. It's not always just, okay, here are my revision notes. Oh, you did it. And we take it and we go out on submission. I mean, I have gone rounds of revisions with a client. So we do have to love it enough to keep reading. I remember
the easiest ones are even 3 rounds.
Yeah, I remember when I interned, a book that you were working on, I think we did something like 4 or 5 rounds of revisions, if not more.
Yeah, and that particular, and every revision is different, which is interesting, because in that one, what I remember very specifically is we did it in chunks. So with the way the author was working, we literally at one point said, okay, the first third is done.
Right.
When you send it back, I'm only going to look at the next third. Okay, that's done. Now we're only looking at the last third.
Yeah, and some of like, a method like that is really useful when we have been reading it a ton and we know that it's almost there, but we can't like step back and see everything all at once. And we need to be like, all right, this is good. Now, how do we focus on this? How do we make this match that? So, I mean, and I say this about everything in publishing for every book, but every book is completely different. Whether the timeline is different, but also the amount of revisions and how it really works out is completely different.
Yeah, and just to backtrack a smidge, because something just popped into my head when we talked about taking on a book and committing ourselves to do this kind of work. It's really important to remember as the author that we are also committing our work on this for free. Yeah. Because we don't get paid as agents until the book sells and we can earn a commission. So all of this work and these rounds and these emails and this commitment we're making is all time that we are working with the author, and the only pay we're getting is the belief that moving forward we're all going to get paid for this.
Right.
So making that commitment to do that comes from it's a big commitment for us.
Yeah, a lot of different factors to consider.
Yeah. So,
well, okay, so we hope this snapshot into what revisions with an agent looks like might be helpful to you. If you have any questions about revisions, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below. But in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here next week.
bye.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, we offer a number of great workshops through Speakeasy and other platforms.
These workshops have been a fun new thing that we've been doing, not just me and James, but others at BookEnds, where we work with you interactively on critiques, queries, and insights and answer questions into publishing. So you can find out more information on our website or through speakeasy.com, and we hope you'll sign up. Bye.